I lived my life by your mandates. I dedicated my life to your mandates.
No soup for you.
Hello everyone, welcome to 2FAST2MOVIE. I'm your host Kenny, and with me is my co-host Matt Kimes. And today we are covering Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode 5, called Truth. So Matt, it's after a very tense episode last week, what did you think of this episode this week?
I thought it was a good breather. It's very clearly the calm before the storm because the next episode is the finale, so all the shit has to hit the fan next episode. Having said that, I enjoyed some of the more quieter moments in this episode because what this episode lacked for maybe like action, it still had a lot of internal conflict for both Sam and Bucky, and that was really one of the bigger selling points for me of the show going forward was their internal journeys, and I think the show's doing a good job of moving those forward. And you see John Walker slipping further and further, especially in that end credits sequence. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you that the selling point for this show for me was the characters, and like I said from the beginning, like I'm a slut for character, so and this episode was just a lot of that, and I was just eating it up all the way. But before we dive in further, if you like what you see here, please be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. We upload new videos every week. And our friends are covering Invincible and My Hero Academia on their segments of 2FAST2MOVIE, so please be sure to check that out after you watch this. And as always, spoilers ahead. So, we can get into the plot summary. This week we pick up right where we left off last week with John killing the Flag Smasher in public and sort of him running away from that. Sam and Bucky catch up, and they sort of get into a scuffle with John over the shield, and it ends with John taking defeat. And it was a pretty good fight sequence, and just seeing John lose it, I just love seeing that. After that, Sam takes the shield back and decides to lay low, and Bucky turns in Zemo to the Dora, and Zemo surprisingly goes quietly. And also Bucky asks the Wakandans for one more favor before they part ways. And meanwhile, John sort of deals with the aftermath back in DC, and he's approached by a strange woman who gives him a blank card. Thunderbolts, Dark Avengers, maybe. I don't know. And afterwards, Sam visits Isaiah Bradley to talk about his past, Isaiah's past, and the possibility of a black man becoming Captain America would be. Sam decides to stay with his sister, Sarah, and fix a boat, while Bucky joins in to help out and flirt with Sarah as well, because why not? Sam and Bucky sort of have an emotional conversation about Steve and their partner's legacy, sort of giving closure to their rivalry conflict with each other, and they sort of walk away being better friends. Motivated, Sam trains further with the shield to prepare himself to become Captain America, and that's where we end off. And there's something about the Flag Smashers doing their thing or whatever, but you get the idea. Again, the selling point for this show was more of the internal conflict than the external conflict, and I feel like the external conflict was more of an afterthought. As of right now, it just doesn't seem to be the weightier thing. It's just the legacy of the shield, and Sam's journey into becoming Captain America, and this episode is sort of that final push of that idea. So Matt, what are your thoughts on Sam's journey so far?
I like it because there's a lot of factors in here more than I think even Sam realized initially, because his experiences with John Walker and seeing what happened with Isaiah Bradley, because you see in the conversation that Bradley was saying, we were told we were getting tetanus shots. So what that tells you is that the U.S. government was just experimenting on these people without even telling them what they were doing. It wasn't like Steve Rogers where he volunteered to be this science project. It was just people being lied to and then having a very much if it dies kind of attitude. And so there's the racial implications of what Sam being Captain America would be like. There's also the fact that he's kind of split between his duty as an Avenger and his duty as the head of his family, or his duty towards his family. And just the fact that Steve Rogers was someone he cared so deeply about and looked up to so much that is there any living person alive that can actually live up to this legacy?
Excuse me. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with what resonated with me in Sam's Sam's closure in this episode is his conversation with Bucky, and Bucky sort of apologizing and sort of realizing the idea of what it means for a black man to take up the shield didn't occur to me, and what the weight of that means and what that meant to the world, and Bucky apologizes for that, and it's sort of like what I was talking about last week about Captain America, I guess, is sort of like a metaphor for the ideal America, what the metaphor for America, period, and with the U.S. government continuing to force this image of Captain America, white guy, blonde hair, blue eyes, oh yeah, we want things to stay the same. Steve Rogers is over 100 years old, and we still want to keep that image of America, Captain America.
The funny thing about that is that Steve Rogers didn't even really conform to that ideal. They had to give him the serum for him to even look like the ideal they wanted him to be. It was never about what he looked like or what he did. It was about the fact that he was willing to fight for what he thought was right no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what a lot of people miss when, creating this new Captain America, just for, a symbol for America. And, Sam taking up the shield changes the idea of Captain America. And, Isaiah sort of going they'll never let a black man become Captain America. And I think what this episode was going for is that, the shield technically does not belong to the U.S. government, like that lady said. It's sort of in that gray area. So, sort of Sam taking up the shield, it's not like he's asking permission to take up the shield. He's doing it because it's right.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing his new suit next episode, and him finally taking up the role as Captain America. And I'm really excited to see what that means for the rest of the MCU. What are your thoughts on Sam becoming Captain America for the rest of the MCU?
I think emotionally he's ready to do it at this point, or ready to accept what that means and what that entails. And but it's also interesting because I think one of the things is that that guy in the army that he's been working with, Torres.
Torres. Yeah.
He's next in line to become the Falcon now, because he becomes Falcon in the comics, doesn't he?
Yeah. He does become Falcon in the comics. Sam's wings sort of broke with that fight with John Walker, and he's just sort of like, yeah, keep it. So that's setting him up to become Sam's partner as the new Falcon.
And I don't think this is serving as his origin story kind of the way that WandaVision did for Monica. But I also think it's leaving enough breadcrumbs there to where when they go back and start focusing on it later on in maybe a different project, it will already have been set up.
Yeah, I think, like what these shows are doing is setting up the new A-list Avengers, like, Sam being Captain America and Vision coming back in WandaVision. Spoilers, sorry. And also setting up other characters within the MCU, like Monica and now Torres becoming Falcon. So what these shows are doing, having these big character arcs for characters that we haven't gotten a chance to explore before, but also leaving breadcrumbs for stuff that we can come back later in maybe another show or maybe a movie. Who knows?
And I think it's very smart of the MCU to do it this way, because if Monica had like her own solo movie, for example, yeah, sure, we see her in Captain Marvel, but she's so tangentially in there and not really related to the rest of anything that's gone on for the last 50 plus hours of runtime, that I think that integrating her into this world in a very, very naturalistic way, and you can substitute Torres in here as well, it feels more natural to have other people kind of just not fall into these roles, but kind of have the roles chosen for them. But I also think it's good that we're getting more attention on people like Sam and Bucky and Vision, so that it won't be that jarring the next time we see an Avengers movie and none of the original 6 are in there.
Yeah, segue. John Walker. Let's talk about him. Sort of going full reverse Captain America this episode. I mean, before watching this episode, what were you expecting from John Walker, and versus what you got in this episode?
I don't know quite what I was expecting. It almost seems like he was on a bit of a high from the serum, like in that kind of like roid rage kind of way, and the stress of having Lamar die just sends him over the edge. But I also like that they don't have him just go full, I guess, mustache twirly. Because one of the best scenes in the episode for me is he goes to Lamar's family. And literally the only thing he does is that he's trying to console them, and he lies to them and says the person that he killed on live television was the guy who killed him. But it's like, it's one of those things where the truth wouldn't help the situation in any way. And so he's not... I mean, he's very clearly has become one of the main antagonists of the show, but I don't think he's like an inherently evil person.
No. Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I love about watching this character. I mean, very clearly he wasn't right for the role of Captain America, never was, but that also really wasn't his fault in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he's you have that scene where he's talking to that panel where it's not a court-martial, but it's not far off from being one. And he's like, you guys created me, and now you're just throwing me off to the side. Because one of the more important lines of dialogue is that they pull his retirement and like healthcare benefits from him. And that almost reminds me of the movie First Blood a little bit. Now, to make a long story short, the movie First Blood is quite different from the rest of the Rambo franchise. First Blood is about a Green Beret operative who has not had a steady job since returning home from Vietnam, gets treated horribly by law enforcement, and then he basically goes full gorilla to avoid getting arrested from them. That's the plot of the movie, and the guy who wrote the book kind of wrote it with almost like a Frankenstein's monster kind of point of view. So the U.S. government creates this ultimate soldier psychologically and physically out of this guy, and then throws him in the trash because it is scared of what it has created, and then it reaches a breaking point because of that. So it reminds me a little bit of that, like just thematically. But we get our first end credit scene in the show with John Walker, so it was nice to see him making a new shield with the Medals of Honor on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that imagery looks familiar. The shield with the Medal of Honor on it. I don't know. I can't say that's like a comic book thing. Maybe it is. I don't know.
If any of you watching know what that might be a reference to, or if that appears in the comics, please let us know in the comments, because we have no idea.
Yeah, please. I only know so much about John Walker. He's not an evil character, but like there's just, I don't know, definitely like a very Frankenstein's monster type thing where it's just like, you created me and I'm gonna, finish it, type thing. And yeah, with let's talk about that lady that just sort of slipped in like in the middle of his conversation with his wife, just like what's her name?
Okay, so her full name, according to Wikipedia, is La Contessa Valentina Allegra De La Fontaine, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfuss. The funny thing is, I just watched the Soup Nazi episode a few days ago.
Oh, that's just
so
perfect.
All I could think of is no shield for you.
No shield for you.
1 year.
Oh god. Oh, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Yeah. No, it's again, as much as I'm the self-proclaimed comic book nerd of this channel, I know very little about this character. They're doing a great job of like taking like very obscure characters and just like making it work.
Yeah, they really dug into the archives for this one, because like one of her aliases is Madam Hydra, but she's not even like the main Madam Hydra that you would see in like the animated series. That's somebody else. So this character seems like she kind of is affiliated with both sides at one point or another. She was like a SHIELD operative and worked for Hydra and Leviathan at points, and it really kind of... I mean, Hydra's not really a faction anymore, and neither really is SHIELD, so who knows?
Maybe she used to be Madam Hydra?
I don't know.
Then maybe, I don't know. But that's not... I don't think that's the important factor of... the significance of her character. I mean, they did get a pretty recognizable actress to play her, so I'm assuming we're going to see her again. My interest, more or less, is like her just coming in Nick Fury style, just like, oh, here's my card, and just like there's nothing on this, and I'm not sure which side he was supposed to be looking at, but like there was a black side, so I'm just like, Dark Avengers, I don't know, because
what are the Dark Avengers?
So the Dark Avengers is sort of like a morally gray version of the Avengers, sort of like Spec Ops. Version of the Avengers that's sort of owned by the government. And I mentioned Thunderbolts last week, which is sort of in the same vein where these group of are a group of superpowered beings, where the government can just sort of like we'll use you for our bidding, kind of like the Suicide Squad, basically. Sort of in that vein, except they don't have a bomb.
Would it be kind of like what what Hydra used the Winter Soldiers for initially? Something like that?
Yeah, kinda. But, less on the whole mind control thing and more of a do this for your country type thing. So, maybe you can argue that that's sort of in a similar vein, but...
so that's where we'll see U.S. Agent really...
Yeah. So, with John Walker making his shield... and him, being pretty much court-martialed and just sort of having nothing left. I can see this is sort of like the birth of the U.S. agent, and I mentioned last week that I think it would be a waste to just. I mean, even if they do kill him off, I'd be okay with it. But also, I'm just like, this is a very interesting character, and I would love to see him in future installments as in a Dark Avengers group or the Thunderbolts. I can definitely see in the final episode maybe Thunderbolt Ross comes in just like oh yeah, what if I say we're putting a team together or something.
Well, what wouldn't surprise me at this point is whatever fight he gets into in the finale episode. After he loses, he's kind of like licking his kind of like the ending of the original Hulk movie, if you remember that, where Ross loses basically, and then he's in a bar, and then the last thing you see is Tony Stark approaching him. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't shock me if there's like a moment like that involving Julia Louis-Dreyfuss in the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we still have that card, so. Mm-hmm. It could be like a blue light type thing, or burn this under the full moon or something, type thing. I could definitely see them setting that up as Dark Avengers or the Thunderbolts, whichever name they're going with. They pretty much serve the same purpose because, when John Walker was a character in the comics, they sort of didn't know what to do with him. They tried to push for this, rogue Avenger type character. So they sort of put him the captain of the Thunderbolts. That didn't work out. Dark Avengers, that didn't work out. So he was just sort of passed around in certain issues. So, they were fine. But the idea is pretty cool, and I would love to see them, to borrow some of those elements and make it work for TV, maybe, or I don't know.
Yeah.
A film where they're the bad guys. I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah, but there's a lot of potential there. A lot of potential. And yeah, speaking of potential, Bucky. Bucky was pretty much a bro in this episode.
I love those moments where he's hitting on Sam's sister, and Sam's like, "Hey, can you not?"
as a big brother myself, I feel very much for Sam. I'm just like, you stay away from her, man. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, Bucky. I really liked how they emotionally Bucky and Sam sort of had some closure with one another and just sort of accepting we're both a part of Steve's legacy, and sorry for the misunderstandings and stuff like that.
And then Sam tells Bucky, if you really want to try and fix things for the people you've hurt, here's how you do it. Mm-hmm. Or here's how you should be doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you think about that? What are your thoughts on where Bucky's story might go?
I think we're going to get a moment with him. I'm sorry, I for the life of me cannot remember the name of the older man that he was
Isaiah Bradley?
out with. No, in the first episode, the older man he was hanging out with. The guy whose son he killed. There's going to be a moment where he has to sit down and talk to them, and then come clean with it, basically. It kind of reminds me of the ending of the Bourne Supremacy. Now, to make a long story short, Bourne Supremacy is about a former U.S. assassin losing his memories, waking up, and then slowly discovering that he did all of these horrifying things, and that he hurt a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so one of the best scenes in the initial trilogy is he's talking to the daughter of these two people that he had killed, and then just coming clean about it. So I imagine we're going to get a very, very similar scene in the next episode. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be messy, but I also think it's like what Bucky has to do for him to be a more complete person going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely see I can definitely see the sort of nightmare theme come to play, where like when he does, this is his like, of course he's wrong with so many people, but this is probably his first step in like, yeah, it'll be messy and it's going to hurt like hell. It's gonna be like tearing his own arm off, and I can see him like a scene where he actually sleeps well for once, where it's not over completely, but it's a start, and yeah, I really liked that line where Sam was like, you're not mending, you're avenging, and sort of righting the wrongs of people that you've allowed to like run amok or whatever, and yeah, the hardest part is apologizing for the wrong things that he's done, and
or was forced to do. Let's be fair to Bucky here.
yeah, of course, but it's very complicated with Bucky, and yeah, him getting over the Winter Soldier program that's in his head, that was a start, and then like avenging the wrongdoers, and now the sort of final step to sort of him becoming Bucky again is sort of giving closure to these people. And yeah, it's shitty, but that responsibility was sort of forced on him, and it's very intriguing, and I'm super excited to see how everything ends next week. Yeah, and
Speaking of endings,
the Flag Smashers.
Okay, I have a real gripe with the show about them at that point, and I know that you had mentioned that there were some cut storylines involving them, and part of it involved like a virus that they were weaponizing that, like, for obvious reasons they decided to change. And so I get that in some respects with this one, the show's kind of in a rock and a hard place as far as these characters are concerned. But here's the thing, I have still no fucking idea what the Flag Smashers are actually trying to accomplish, and this late into the show, it's a huge problem because I don't know what the stakes are regarding them. I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't know what their end game is. I don't know, like, are they trying to kill the people at this thing in New York? Are they trying to help out refugee camps? Are they, like, what are they doing? Like, because Carly is ostensibly one of the villains of the show, and she kind of had a few point of no return moments in this episode herself, kind of like how John Walker has. But we also know nothing about like what she actually wants to accomplish. We know what she believes in, but I don't know what her actual objectives are. And so I can't find, like, it's hard to get invested in that storyline right now because, again, I don't know what the stakes are. Like, why should we care about whether or not she succeeds or whether or not Sam and Bucky are able to stop her?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, as much as I feel for Carly, I don't know what this mission is currently. And I can sort of, like, this theory is not mine, disclaimer. This has sort of been sort of lingering around the internet. And I think it's good. I think it's, a good thing to point out, because if this storyline were, if I wouldn't say like, it would fix everything with the Flag Smashers. I think it would just, help the story flow a little better. So it's sort of been said that like, they shot the show throughout COVID as well, and doing reshoots and stuff like that. And there was sort of so it's not confirmed. It's not confirmed by Marvel, but it's rumored that there was a subplot involving a virus with the Flag Smashers, and I can understand why this was cut, because like if we think about it, like her Mama Danya, she sort of died from tuberculosis, and that was it. We don't see her. She was mentioned, she was dead, and now she's gone. And in the first or second episode, the Flag Smashers were stealing vaccines. And we were like, vaccines or super soldier serums or whatever. And it was weird because they stole vaccines, never mentioned again.
The show kind of flip-flopped over what it was they were stealing.
Yeah, no, it was vaccines. It was vaccines, so that's the first hint. Second, it's like, okay, so why are the Flag Smashers mad? That they're being moved. A virus, maybe a virus that killed probably a lot of their people, and most likely killed Mama Donya. And maybe it was cut because maybe it was a bioweapon from the power broker who lives in Madripoor, an Asian country. So
that makes entirely too much sense. Oh God!
Like, yeah, just
what is the show supposed to do? If
exactly.
That was,
so yeah, exactly.
Oh,
so it was just the worst timing possible. Like, and if this were released in any other year, then it's just like, oh yeah, that story makes perfect sense. Like, it's not confirmed, but just that little bit, and if you were to put it into the story, it just makes perfect sense. And
it also explains how they're like, what were they doing at the end? Activating sleeper agents via their version of Citizen, or
I guess I wasn't very clear
know.
on that either, and
I
assume those were reshoots. Those were or
yeah,
because they had to cut around that story, and that's why the Flag Smashers are so pissed off, and hence their sort of movement, because the GCR let their people die, and then they're taking action because nobody's getting taken care of, and I think and
then we would also have a more definite objective, like what are they actually trying to accomplish. Oh yeah, that's tough.
It's really tough.
I fully believe that. That makes entirely too much sense, because it's not like Marvel because even if the villain's goal is like something basic like world domination, a la Loki in the original Avengers movie, you at least knew what he was trying to do and how he was planning on doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you look back on some episodes, you can definitely feel the ADR, where like they were talking to that scientist in that cargo, where the scientist was like, Carly came to me about helping Mama Donya, and then we cut to reaction shots where he said tuberculosis. So,
yeah, I honestly, if I'm the showrunner or any of the producers, I have no idea what I would do in that situation. That's God.
Yeah, no, it's
as a viewer, I don't want to watch. If it had something to do with a virus, and I knew that going into the show, and they left it in there, I probably wouldn't be watching it, because I just would not find enjoyment in it. So it's they made the right decision, but it's like
it's at a cost. But
yeah,
in my opinion, as much of a loss it is for the Flag Smashers subplot to not work out, I still think it's a solid show, and I think it's like the selling point of the show is the emotional journey between Bucky and Sam, and as long as and also the introduction of John Walker, and those points I think they do very, very well. And it's unfortunate, really unfortunate, that the Flag Smashers plot just not as strong, and it's just sort of there, I guess, but with what we got, I think it's still very solid, and I think still very impressive. Having to cut such a big subplot out, but I would do the same, honestly, in this climate. It's just
you have to. You can't not do it.
It seems very insensitive not to do, So
there were a whole host of movies that had to change up their releases and the content of their plot lines post 9/11. So it's like this isn't really a new thing
Absolutely.
for Hollywood. Yeah, and it's just like it's an unfortunate situation that really nobody's at fault for it. But yeah,
Yeah, it's a really shitty situation, but it's a very solid series, and right now a very solid. This episode I think was very solid, a good calm before the storm. What are your closing thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, no, I did enjoy the episode overall. I am enjoying the show overall. If the show has to make a choice between logical emotional storytelling and logical plotting, if you put a gun to my head and pick one to choose, you have to go with the emotional storytelling 10 times out of 10. And that's what the show's doing, and the emotional journey that characters like Sam and Bucky and even John Walker and like Carly has had some really good moments. And so I think that's one of the more disappointing things is that those moments have been undercut a little bit. But even the stuff with Zemo or Sharon Carter, this show is so good at just putting its characters into situations where it's not just dependent on the action and their ability to punch their way out of situations, but they have to actually grow and develop as characters to move forward. Mm-hmm. And that's been the real treat to watch with this show. Good calm before the storm episode, and I can't wait for next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. Yeah, it's again, I'm a slut for character and emotional growth. Can't say that enough. And yeah, this episode is perfect for that. And just the little, this is a good after the very dark ending that we got last week. This episode was just a lot of levity, and just like even the scene with Sam's nephews playing with the shield, I thought was very cute and very wholesome, and just a lot of wholesome moments in this episode. And also the payoff of John Walker just losing it slowly and just seeing that explode in the next episode just gets me very hyped. And yeah, it's a great episode for me. It's everything I want and character study and whatever. And yeah, I'm super excited to see Sam take up the mantle as Captain America next week. So thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. You can see more 2FAST2MOVIE on our channel here on YouTube. Our friends will be covering other shows like Invincible and My Hero Academia, so please be sure to check that out. You can find our podcasts on most places you find podcasts, like Spotify and Amazon Music, like Return of the Movie, if you want.
And we're finally on an Apple.
And we're fine. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you guys for listening, and as always, it's 2FAST2MOVIE.